Now I hit record, so there's that. So hello, world. Um, we almost have everything set up. I'm just going to put out this link. Send now. Let's there we go. And hopefully we'll get viewers. I haven't been doing Twitch all that much.
Yeah, you usually get a couple of, like, handful of people.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm gonna actually just see if it's on Twitch. Yeah, it says that there's a session.
Awesome.
Okay. There we go. Sorry if this is loud. Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't know if, did my camera freeze while I was doing that stuff?
No, I don't think you've frozen at all, actually. You've been quite smooth and clear.
Perfect.
It's audio and video.
People are typing on Discord.
Well, it's new kind of headset. That's very cool.
Okay, someone's already accusing us of being wrong.
In what capacity?
I don't know. I'll read out what I said. I said, we have a guest. Come meet Adam James Davis as we talk about some controversial topics focused on the concept that humans are religious in a plethora of ways that people wouldn't traditionally imagine as religion. I don't know if... Oh, so his response is, so in other words, you're bending the definition. And, is that the case? I don't know. Like, so I would say the different... Okay, I would say it's as religious as New Age ideas are. Because I think that's true.
I think recently the definition has expanded somewhat. And I think words are subject to change anyway, and they're quite fluid. And I certainly think in recent times that the definition of religion has expanded to include not necessarily spiritual spheres of human activity and thought. Like I've noticed it used when in political discussions, people use religious to describe someone who's fervently adhering to something like far leftism or far rightism or like a religious communist. I think it's used in that way a lot recently. And I think, of course, it's anchored, it's quite intertwined with spirituality, but I certainly think the word can still be used accurately to describe someone who is blindly following something excessively and wants to shove it down others' throats. It's either my way or the higher way, I'm right or wrong. So that's what I think. And I certainly feel that way about the recent, feels like a while ago now, but it's still quite fresh. The COVID vaccination controversy and division. I certainly think religion in that way can be used as an accurate description of how people behave on both sides of the divide. For me, I've been quite lucky, really, because admittedly, I am the last person in my family to remain unvaxxed and can go into the whys and how and what's to go. But I've been quite lucky enough to have the freedom to make that decision and the rest of my family, more or less, have been pretty much accepting of that. And say, okay, well, again, it's sovereign over one's body and mind, isn't it? And certainly that's been on people's mouths, people's minds recently with the latest abortion controversy. Would you agree?
Yeah, so, well, I guess I'll start with, so when I use the word religious, the way that this started, so actually first, this is probably, from just looking at what we plan to talk about, I think that it's going to be potentially controversial. What I would say is like, and this is something I actually had to tell myself, but I don't know. I think so. There's like a lot of what we haven't explained yet, and I think that people might become emotional by talking about the topics in these ways. So like, I guess I should say what made me think originally of using this word religion this way. So what I guess what I mean by it is, so I sort of am looking at it like there is like this whole, let's say, scientific framework of looking at the world, but then I think there's another kind of lens that people are looking at that's like very much not in alignment with that scientific kind of way of looking at the world, and instead it's like you can call it, rather than religion, you could probably use like a word like imagination or something if you wanted. But and the way that I'm kind of using it is like, well, okay, so what originally I was thinking of, I'm trying to think if I should go into this because I know it's going to get controversial like super fast. But
just take our time.
Yeah.
Make it go steady. Sure. I think the word religion, alongside maybe how the word is used in discussions about or what people adhere to, I think it's become more, it's developed more of a negative connotation, like it's used as a pejorative sometimes. Oh, there's no need to get religious about it, or
yeah, this is a good point.
or you're too religious about this topic. It's used as a negative, as criticism.
Yeah.
Some of the things that divide people as well. It's been separated a bit more from the kind of spiritual background of the word, original, I think, with spiritual matters.
Yeah, the word
It's used to describe a lot more earthly matters now, like truth, conspiracy theories, COVID, vaccine.
Okay, that's actually a good point there. So like, the way I use religion, it's as much as someone might say a conspiracy theory is like a religion, or even like a cult is like a religion. And I think that
we're cults as well,
yeah, I think our lives are almost inescapably dominated by this kind of, I guess, like perspective taking or like framing of things. I think that, like, at the most extreme, I think that if we were to stop doing that, we would just find ourselves like somewhere close to just total solipsism and like just emptiness, like, or especially the majority of people, like maybe like so kind of like if you look at things like physics or something, I feel like physics and maybe biology a little bit are getting closer to something that's more like tangible or real, but it still is like unavoidably kind of like filtered through unsolvable problems like say solipsism or something. But then once you get to things like politics or what pretty much the majority of our lives are about, like the way we identify ourselves, like our whole concept of what we are, who other people are, what other people are thinking, what we're feeling. Like, pretty much the majority of our actual practical lives, I think, are lived kind of through religious mentality.
Yeah. It actually got me thinking, it's a rhetorical question, or not, maybe should everyone be religious about something, about at least one thing? Should everybody have some kind of obsession, or something that drives them to almost like rapturous state? I mean, it's like with me, I think I'd say my primary school of thought that I follow, I adhere to, is suffering abolitionism, which I say most people might agree that it's something that's rooted in science, and technology and futurism. I noticed, I post regularly about the David Pearce, Hedonistic imperative, suffering abolitionism, futurism, and noticed the occasional hostile feelings that they provoke, and it certainly feels like some of the people on my friends list see me as a kind of almost religious adept to something like that. And I think transhumanism and spirituality and transhumanism and religion is quite an interesting tango. I mean, recently I've noticed on Facebook and social media, people more willing to kind of experiment with like a synthesis of futurism and transhumanism with things like Buddhism, and especially with the kind of recent new renaissance with psychedelics. And I've certainly noticed in the noughties that futurism and transhumanism, singularitarianism is still quite atheistic, and a lot of people who were transhumanists about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, would scoff at spirituality and religion especially. But yeah, seeing some of the responses that some of my posts about suffering and nature of suffering, and even if we never, I mean, it gave me reason to kind of reflect a little bit. Like with David Pearce, he's a hero of mine, one of my biggest inspirations, and undoubtedly a genius. He got me thinking, with suffering abolition of suffering, maybe that's not something that will ever be achieved completely, 100%, but it's still like a worthy goal, something like an attractor, if you like. Even if we never get there completely, it's still something we can strive towards. And I think the term abolition of the suffering seems to either put a taste in people's mouths. It kind of gave me the reason to stop, pause, and reflect about maybe more realistic things that could still be under that umbrella, and that are more reasonable and earthly, that more people could get on board with, like being anti-torture. That's I think very doable, very something that we can do. We can have something substantial, and maybe changing to a vegan diet or helping homeless people. All of these things alleviate suffering. It's a long way off from abolishing completely, but maybe that's a more grounded and less religious way of looking at something that I'm myself quite passionate about. So I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there.
Yeah, I think so, like, kind of the thing, this isn't really the thing that made me originally, like, this is sort of a thing I think about constantly, actually, but that lately, right, the thing that I was thinking about that's weird, that I don't know, I've been, like, in chats sort of arguing that well, I don't know, let me think how to start this. So yeah, I guess I've been arguing that in some sense, the ideas about gender identity are kind of like a religion. So basically, I think that, like, physically, let's say, like, people talk about, like, differences of sex and gender. I think physically our sexes, I don't think they're super different, but I think that what happens is there's a lot of incentives in our culture to exaggerate those differences. And then I think once the exaggeration culture has kind of dominated everything, it's like we've created these kind of personas that are like characters, and we kind of that's basically what I think the religion is. Like, so for example, someone told me while I was talking about this, they sort of rejected the idea that they subscribed to this religious idea, but then they also subsequently said that it is hard to be a man further down in the conversation. And then I was thinking, like, if they're talking about sex, then this doesn't really make sense, because it's like the difference of being a man and a woman is like, there's like a little bit of things. Like, there's things like periods or pregnancy or maybe hormone differences maybe, and like a couple things. There are things that aren't really like when he says it's difficult being a man, I don't think he's talking at all about that. I think he's talking about like the religious structures imposed onto him, where if you don't follow these, like if you don't try to fit the persona or advertise yourself as this thing that actually is not related to your sex, it's forcefully related to your sex, but it's not actually related to it, then that's what's difficult. And the idea that he's saying it's difficult, it's also interesting because, like, when we talk about, like, say, gender dysphoria, I think that he's experiencing that when he says that it's difficult to be a man. Like, even though he doesn't want to transition, it's like he's saying that this, like, gender construct is causing him suffering. And then if you look at things like the suicide rate being higher with men, which is arguably for like
trans as well.
Yeah, and it might be because, like, there's other arguments that could be made, like impulsivity gets brought up and stuff like that, or more violent methods for trying to commit suicide or something is another argument. But also,
there's a definite difference there.
Yeah.
Men and women in terms of suicide.
And I think, I don't know, like, I think stuff like that is like, well, I don't know, I think both genders experience dysphoria because of the gender norms all the time. Like,
what you said,
maybe I should just stop there. What do you think? And for one, I think one more thing, because I don't want it to get into weird, like, transphobic territory. So, like, I think realistically we should be able to design our own persona. I mean, maybe that's debatable. I haven't thought as much about this, but I don't think that, like, I think we should be able to just kind of create our own character to go into society. Like, I'm not necessarily super on board with these ideas like man, woman, even. So that might be like, well, I'll just stop there. I'll let you go now.
Well, I think what you said about like non-transgender dysphoria, lack of a better term, was spot on. And I maybe I'm mistaken, but I find it difficult to, like, tease apart sex and gender in my mind a little bit. But for me, they're still quite close to married in my head. And I think, like, an ethical, moral perspective, the trans movement is something that's very puzzling and it's still troubling, because I think we're still at a time when the methods, the surgical methods, the interventions are still probably a long way off from being effective. And I feel affected by the descriptions and imagining how they do the surgeries and how they do the surgical interventions, and it it just seems very well, very invasive and very um, when it's one of those things that when you go down, once you cross that line, it's very difficult, it's pretty much impossible to get back over again. And we're seeing it's been very interesting to part of the generation to see this trans culture and how it's developed and flourished and now but now it's leading on to a community of people who detransitioners who feel maybe they went down that avenue too young, or they were too impulsive, or they felt maybe pressured, or they saw something on television or in movies and they thought that's what they wanted to be, and then they do the whole thing, the whole shebang, and a few years later they think, oh, what have I done? This is not me, and so they want to go back to how they were before that, and obviously that's something that's even further way off. So seeing that develop and reading like testimonies of people going through that on I say like Reddit is very very upsetting to be honest. And again, of course, I don't want to get into transphobic territory either, but it comes from a place of compassion, and I think it's something I've something quite personal to me as well, because I almost went down that route myself, and then someone just kind of stopped me, and I was looking back now, it's like I'm surprised how easy it was to like take first steps down that road, because obviously my parents were like, okay, well, if this is what you want, God bless them for doing that, and the doctors were like, okay, well, make a referral to this centre. I'm quite grateful I missed the boat on that. I didn't really commit to it fully, and so I worry about maybe people who are vulnerable, and maybe they have slightly pushed parents who want to be seen as perfect liberals, perfect progressives, and they've got their children further down the line thinking, well, this is not me, and I want to go back to how I was before, but of course it's we can't detransition as easily as we can with gender reassignment. So that's something that I have to get off my chest. I think of course I don't want to be transphobic at all, but it comes from a place of compassion, and I think maybe it's something I worry about a lot. Of course, you mentioned suicide, and suicide rates in the trans community are quite high as well, and I think it's more to do with maybe regret rather than any discrimination or bullying. I think it's tricky. It's a tricky one. It's a minefield, of course. I think no matter how gently you word it or how much you try and say it comes from a place of compassion, it's hard to express concerns without sounding at least transphobic, unfortunately. It's not all
I think like what you're describing, it also so maybe this will also clear something up. Well, from my perspective, I'm not really I would be concerned about the sort of social dynamics that you just described, and I actually think like that situation you said about like being the perfect liberal parents, I feel like that kind of scenario almost like permeates our entire like society, on not just like gender, but like every type of thing, like every ideal, every different thing. Yeah, like I feel like when I was thinking of like religiousness, it's sort of like that, and also, so I would be like, I'm not really like I would be concerned about that sort of problem. I'm less concerned with like if people want to modify their bodies kind of without this kind of dynamic involved. If people want to like, I see it not so different than just any sort of body modification, which I've seen people argue against that even too, but I sort
Right.
of, I'm like whatever, like I don't know, but like if people like started like embedding like horns onto them or something, like I see it like on a
Yeah.
similar level. But when it
Mm.
does get like a little weirder when it's like if there's like if someone young does it and their parents are
Same.
like motivated by like say even not trying to not seem transphobic, and
Exactly. Yeah.
then like later the person changes their mind, that is a scary kind of thing. Like even if it were just horns, like, and the child was like playing their favorite video game or something, and then they like want to look like the character and then they change their mind, that would be
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah.
um
I mean, yeah. I mean, of course, yeah. Morphological freedom is one of the main futurist ideals, dreams, visions, if you like. And I think what raised many red flags for me regarding the contemporary trans movement is what you said, the age question. How old or how young is the cut-off point between someone being too young to make such a drastic decision to someone who is has the necessary wisdom to make the decision, and yeah, it's trickling down to lower and lower ages, age groups, and but then that, of course, that raises like certain historical matters where even in Western society, like a century or two ago, people get married at 12 years old and having children at 13, 14, 15, um, and started working down the mines at the same age. Um, but I do think there needs to be a strict cut-off point in terms of things like chemical interventions, like puberty blockers. Um, it should, yeah, it's such an ethical minefield. Should a child go through puberty first before having these kind of chemical interventions, which they'd be halfway through puberty before being allowed to take puberty blockers, or only part of the way through completely before. Um, it's my gut tells me it should be around 17 years, where below is too young, but maybe around 17 and then up, they could have the wisdom and the legal wherewithal to be able to make those choices. I'm not sure why. It's just feeling in my gut that 17 is probably um, the most appropriate age. But then people tell me, oh, that's still too old. But it's this is just the idea of messing around with young people's bodies. It's something that unfortunately leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Um, yeah, it's oh, it's like same with like circumcision. Really, I'm very much completely against doing it on baby boys, um, and because to me that's that covers a whole range of different abuse types: medical abuse, sexual abuse, child abuse, and it's a traumatic event at a very crucial stage of a person's life. When when a young person is growing up, these traumatic events help um, form the character, force the personality that will stay with them for the rest of their life. So these youthful experiences are very important, and we need to. I think that's something that should be abolished, both male circumcision and female genital mutilation. But then, of course, gender reassignment for these children could be classed as the same thing. So, which is why I think 17 is a reasonable age 17 and above is a reasonable age to be allowed to prescribe. Your older teenagers, puberty blockers, and maybe surgical interventions maybe a few years after that.
Yeah. I think one thing I was thinking is, I don't know, what if the regret that people face, well, I think say like someone transitions and then they regret it. I think that is also like, I think it's not that different of a framing that led them to become to transition in the first place. Like so it's sort of a weird thing. Like, I don't know how
It's
one would yeah, like, because I don't know how you would predict that unless maybe
like yeah,
like maybe people
maybe
oh, sorry, I think there's a delay also, which might
oh no, sorry, no, sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say is I don't know, like, I mean, this might sound ridiculous, but like maybe you can like see the patterns of their behaviors if they often are making certain kinds of choices in which their conviction shifts. But also that might be something that's usually well, even if it was typical of people who are young, that might be in like the range of like how likely their strong convictions are to shift might be like an indicator or something. I don't know.
It's the age-old question of free will. How do we calculate if it's them or influencing forces?
Yeah.
And maybe I thought maybe in a few years there could be like special drugs for regrets, like anti-regret drugs.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe that could be the solution, but I don't think
I feel like that could be like another identity. Yeah. What if that's like another character archetype, like like you transition away from regret to like post-regret with medical intervention.
Yeah, as another medical procedure. And I think going back to the topic of religion, there's quite an interesting parallel there. Like multiplication of flesh and like body trauma, like particularly like for example, well there was a radical Christian sect in Russia about over a century ago called the probably mispronounced it, the Skopsis, I think, the radical Christian sects, and they had a lot of mortification of flesh rituals where they were vehemently anti-sex, and they thought they were very anti-lust, so they kind of like chopped bits of themselves off and performed their like self-mutilation rituals. And so I think there's this kind of a strange parallel there between like what we're talking about with religion and the lengths some people go to kind of like meet a certain ideal. But I think I do think soon we will witness improvements in gender reassignment technology, because I still think we're at a point in medicine where it's still very destructively invasive or invasively destructive, and it's still too primitive, and it's not accurate and streamlined enough. It's too dramatic, and I think we can speed up the progress to make it more so that it's less of a kind of butchering, if you like, for lack of a better word.
I think
these
this
are kind of like the visceral reactions I have to some of these, unfortunately.
It seems like the stigma on transitioning would also actually reduce the rate of progress in that kind of technology.
Right. Really, yeah. That's, I mean, certainly, yeah. Yeah. I hate to contribute to that stigma. I, I actually have great compassion and sympathy for for people who go through these things, and they have my compassion, absolute compassion. And I think as a society we rushed too quickly into it. I think, and we're too enthusiastic about it, and I think it's going to have a quite a drastically negative effect on a lot of young generations. Um, to be honest, do you think I'm wrong?
No. No, let me think. I don't know. I don't see anything that I disagree with. And I'm sure, okay, right now, I don't think that you're coming off as, I don't think there's worry of you coming off as stigmatizing. If people did read that, they would have to be, reading into, these implicit kind of secret messages or something. Which, that gets, really tricky, because there probably are, transphobic people that actually purposely, try to do stuff like that, but I don't see you as that type of person.
Yeah.
And so another way that this will make it just so much weirder with the religion topic. I think there's lots of forms of religion in society that seem to be mapped onto actual scientific beliefs that are not. It's almost like an illusion. So I think gender type stuff is almost one of those kind, but actually the most freaky or spooky type would be actual beliefs that are about scientific ideas. And I'm not even saying in the sense of I don't think that what people are saying about this scientific idea is actually wrong, but I think that, for example, let's say something about biology. It doesn't really matter. Let's say some sort of medical thing, people talking about, let's say, diabetes. People will talk about diabetes, and I think that on some level, I think people who don't study these things, I think they're almost I think we basically train people who aren't scientists to just parrot the ideas of scientists without actually, I don't think that what they're believing in is mapping onto anything that's really that real, but actually it's more you just taught people to use the language, and actually they're following a religion inside of their head. And I think that's the majority of things. I think the majority of things that are close to accurate for most people are kind of doing this sort of semantic mapping that gives the illusion that people are I don't know, sane or something. Not even just sane, but that people have some that, I don't know. I think a lot of people go about life and they're thinking sort of there's all these crazy people, but then there's these sane people that actually believe in science, and they're not really scientists, but they're maybe I don't know, close enough. But I don't think that's really what's happening. I think people are just playing language games and kind of I don't know, and I don't think there's a way around that, actually, unless you really were going to train everybody to be scientists.
Well, one illustration of the religion topic is, I think we're at a point, and we have been for a few years, a few decades, where atheism has now become a religion in itself.
Yeah.
Atheism has become a religion. There are times and instances where atheists can and have been more religious than theists or theists. And I like unusual, strange words. I think there's a word called scientism, where
Yeah.
you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
Describing overconfident with science's method. It can explain everything that there is. I do think there are spheres of knowledge where maybe science breaks down, and it's just probably just one way of acquiring knowledge. One that is taken us very far, but we don't want to automatically discount other forms of inquiry. And I remember another one of my favourite words, neurotheology, which is of course the neurological basis for religious experiences. How you stimulate one part of the brain can trigger these experiences.
It sounds dangerous. It sounds like this topic is very easy to get lost and create religions about.
Yeah, religions within religions. Yeah, and I think DMT has become very popular recently.
Yeah.
Certainly, that was one of my most precious memories, where I remember actually crying out, "God, is that you?" when I was trying to inhale. It was an incredible experience. And
how do you feel about it now? Do you feel like, has it made you believe in like a God? Because I've heard about that happening, and that actually scares me a little bit. But at the same time, I think I'm insane all the time. So like, what am I scared of?
Psychedelics in general, including but not limited to DMT, definitely helped me switch from atheism to polytheism / pantheism. They've definitely transformed me that way. Oh, you say that process scares you?
Yes.
Or
I don't know though. Like, so I think there's a couple ways it's happening. One way that I'd be okay with.
I've been brainwashed on this.
Well, I would say, okay, the way that I would be more okay with is that it's a reframing of the way that you see the world, in the sense of like okay, I've sort of entertained the framing that society itself might be sentient or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And so like kind of, if it's like that, I'm probably less scared. But if it's like conversion to like a traditionalist sort of version of it, that's a little bit spookier. Like, so I think some of it's like a language thing. Like, so I've seen this a lot with psychedelics, where people will seem to kind of like, it's almost like what I've been doing with the term religion, I think, in the first place in this conversation. Like, so like the first comment that we got on this video was about that we're really just changing the definition and kind of almost misusing the word. And so like some part of me wonders if like and I've seen people with psychedelics do this, is kind of like, okay, what I've actually done is reframe things as telekinesis, or no, telepathy. And what I was kind of doing was, like, this happened on cannabis. I've never actually had it on psychedelics, but on cannabis, I've experienced this thing where basically it felt like something was happening where I let my guard down in such a way that it caused there was a change in the way that I was able to interpret the other person. I felt like part of me was like filtering out a layer of both of our minds in a way that protects us both from a certain kind of weirdness. So, like, for example, my guardedness that doesn't want her to be aware of, like, my own, like, internal motivations. So I don't know if, it looks like my camera's getting weird. I hope it's...
Oh, is it?
It looks... I don't know. Yeah.
You look fine. You look and sound fine.
It might have fixed it when I moved the mouse, I guess. I think it was falling asleep or whatever. I don't know. Or I don't know, but it looks like there's a delay. I hope it's not that bad.
Oh no, I can still see you just fine.
So, kind of what happened is it felt like I almost, like, decided to be okay with, like normally I think I'm biased away from looking at motivations inside myself for what I'm doing that I don't like, and I try to frame it to myself in a way that makes me feel good about myself. And that stopped happening, but also I started to notice when the other person was doing it, and I started to bring this to attention, and the person, it almost like became this subtle subtext sort of conversation all of a sudden, where like I would notice something about what they're thinking but not saying.
Wow.
And then when I would bring this to attention, they would reject this. Then I would try to switch topics, but they would actually start to their behaviors would kind of, their behaviors would display something different. Like they would say, this topic isn't something I'm invested in. Then I would be like, okay, let's just go to the next thing. And then they would not let me go to the next thing. And then it would be obvious that they're like invested. And and it would be weird because I would just sort of, like, my detachment in the moment would just, I'd be like okay with moving to the next thing, but they actually wouldn't. And I don't know, like, I'm not even describing it all exactly how it was, but there were certain things happening where, like, I could pay attention to what I think that they're most likely to be thinking, and I decided that this was something like telepathy, which I think it's more just like a hyper-focused empathy where I have like a higher capacity to actually give my attention to what they're like. Normally it's possible that people might be able to do this, but they're actually more invested in like making themselves look good, or they're more focused on what they're doing in the future or whatever else. And I think it was more like I was just so presently in tune with trying to figure out what they might be thinking that I was just doing it more than usual, which I don't think I was actually having telepathy though, but I think I thought I was. And so I think so that's like an example of how I think psychedelics can cause people to reframe things. Like, I'm taking this experience, calling it telepathy, but it might not actually be telepathy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So do you think that DMT is doing that to people? Like that kind of reframing of what God is? Or do you think that, like, are they starting to believe in like a religion that they had already in the back of their mind? Like about, like, say, Christianity?
I was just thinking about this because I think when I described like my progression or transformation from atheist to polytheist or atheist or pantheist or animist or mixture, I think you used the phrase conversion therapy, and I got a bit concerned, like that just kind of like, because conversion therapy has very dark, negative kind of connotation.
Yeah.
You immediately think of people trying to cure a person's homosexuality, and by using conversion therapy to try and make them heterosexual. I thought, is that like bright brainwashing, and is that something maybe happens with like with psychedelics? Is that kind of conversion therapy where it's something that converts someone from X to Y, in my case atheist to um, to polytheist or pantheist, but I think it just maybe um, opened up some things that maybe were already there. Because even before I thought I felt confused that about the idea of like humans being at the top of like the hierarchy of the food chain. Like we've got all these orders of life below us, and then as humans, it's just nothing above us. I've always thought that seemed quite counterintuitive.
Do you still agree with that perspective?
No, no, not at all. No,
Me neither.
I think now it seems self-evident to me that maybe we are just like in the middle. So we've got bacteria, and worms, insect beetles, and bugs, and then you get more complex orders of beings.
It's a religion.
Yeah, cats and dogs, and then us, and then more and more layers of complex, higher life forms above us. So I think my definition of the word God kind of changed to describe something that was any kind of like higher being above us or whoever. Like for example, we are gods to cats and dogs, and maybe cats and dogs are gods to birds, and birds are gods to worms, and worms are gods to bacteria, and then it's the same going up and up above us as well. And then that kind of helped answer a few other kind of like puzzles and problems, like if God or gods, the gods were so powerful, or so if they were just powerful and loving, how could they allow suffering to take place to, let's say, humans? And I just thought, well, it's the same with humans. Like you can be a loving, compassionate human who is undoubtedly more powerful than, say, a cat, but we can't be everywhere. We can't. It's physically impossible for any one human to rescue every single cat on planet Earth, or every single dog that is in distress. We can only be at one place at one time, and if there are cats or dogs that are in pain or suffering or distress, we do our best to help them. And yes, we are more powerful than like a dog or a cat, but we can only do so much. And we know that there are other cats and dogs suffering elsewhere, but we can't. We're not physically able to help them all. It's beyond our power, and I think it's the same going the other way above us, but even then, I think, like with humans, it's a mixture of higher beings who are loving, who higher beings who don't love us, they hate us, who are indifferent, and maybe even gods aren't powerful enough to help all humans who are suffering. Like us with cats and dogs, they can only do what they can within their sphere of influence, sphere of power. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of answer a few problems and questions. Like it seemed like quite a simple answer, and it was quite obvious to me.
My camera's
maybe overly simplistic.
So I think, and you're saying that these ideas were these are the ones that you've had after DMT, or during or after?
I think they were there, kind of like in me, but then I usually just describe myself as an atheist. I think with psychedelics in general, they just opened up these possibilities, and I was more confident in my belief that there was more out there beyond our perception.
Yeah.
I just need to get a glass of water in the bath.
Okay. I will get water too. I have it right behind me. I'm gonna actually check if there are people. If you're in the chat, feel free to say hi. I will say hi, I guess. Let's see. It says there's 2 people. I think I'm lagging. Sucks.
Sometimes my mouth goes dry when I talk a lot.
Yeah. I need to grab water as well. I'm gonna try to do it. I put it right behind me. I'm gonna see if I can do this without messing up. It was a success.
Have you had any interesting comments?
Not so much. Well, there are some in Discord, I think. Let me see. It says linguistic question. Is just, or is like, or is equal. I don't understand that, actually. And then this one says DMT enhances discovery of natural substantive properties of concepts, which enables truth build and belief discovery. Maybe. What I think we're normally, our conception of the world is it's almost like we're super, it's like, I think we get to a point as we develop these worldviews where we're no longer questioning things about the world, and it's more about I think it's becoming lazy. One effect that I think most of you probably maybe have noticed, maybe someone's noticed, I don't know, but after doing psychedelics, so before it, there's a lot of things where it's almost like you can't even make the choice to think about things. Everything is just lazy and habitual, and if you sit there and you're if you question yourself, it's you don't get an answer. You just kind of are it's almost it just feels like you can't do it, you just, or maybe don't even want to, you're not interested in trying to think of it. If I don't know, that happens to me actually a lot. And I noticed after psychedelics, though, it's way more kind of analytical on some level. But I think what's happening is that you're not supposed to be analyzing things. I think after you settle on something, I think it's almost I think it has to do with the way that we're processing rewards and incentives for things, and where because it's almost there's no point to think about things. But I think that when you do psychedelics, it's disrupting the kind of addicted nature of things in your mind. So whatever you're doing super habitually, if you're not cleaning your room and you've also trained yourself to not care about the fact that you're not cleaning your room, I think both of those will kind of be suppressed, and now you'll be back to this more raw state of oh my god, I care about this, and now I don't have that coping mechanism that was there. I think it almost sets you back to where you're almost in at a exploratory mode rather than a I've figured it out mode. And I think that's kind of the benefit, and I think taking that effect to the most extreme might be what's producing a lot of these crazy effects that people observe, where it's I think ego death and removal of this addiction type of thing are almost the same sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, I just remembered an interesting memory. I think, the experience I was describing with DMT was my second time. The very first time, well, it was very, very hit and miss. Sometimes, uh, I break through, other times I didn't, mostly didn't. But the first proper big wow experience happened. And I remember I was with some friends and
Oh, you cut
a
out.
cigarette. Oh, did I?
Just 2 seconds, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
You sound good now, though.
Do I sound good now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember trying to smoke a cigarette sometime after the first DMT experience, and I automatically uh, gagged. I didn't. It's like my body, my mind wouldn't allow me to have a cigarette. And I remember we were talking about how these substances are good for addictions and kind of breaking some of the circuits that form, over time through addictions. And it certainly became apparent when I tried to smoke a normal cigarette after the first time I did DMT.
Really? Like, so
It was automatic. Oh, yeah, weird.
when you first tried cigarettes, is that how it was too? Like, was there like
Oh, it
an
was
aversive?
even worse. Even
Yeah.
worse. I threw up. I was sick. First time I tried one cigarette, I threw up. I was sick. And I felt dreadful. It wasn't that bad after DMT. It was just like a more of a, oh, that's horrible. I couldn't inhale it.
Yeah.
But that very first time was awful. I was quite I was 17 years old, and I was quite a late bloomer to these things. People who were the same age had been smoking for years. Yeah, weird social situations when you're in college. You're a bit of a you're a bit of an outsider. You have some catching up to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one of the big motivations for trying these different substances was I just enjoyed them. I got a great deal of like sensual enjoyment with music and with just feeling my body, just lying there, buzzing and vibrating, all these synesthetic effects. It was highly pleasurable, and I think sometimes people forget that. That there's a lot of these experiences and these compounds that, if you're prepared well enough, you know what you're doing, you can get you can get a terrific amount of like sensual enjoyment from them. Different smells, fragrances, music, the weather, all these things kind of like working together.
The sickness that comes with nicotine as well. You can take it all in and re-experience it like the first time. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. I never really enjoyed them anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know what, but you other people. I think with nicotine you can get quite interesting nootropic effects with
Yeah.
patches or supplements, and we even I think nicotine can potentiate dreams as well. You have like a nicotine patch before bed. I've not tried it yet, but okay. Dreams were another interesting topic for me.
Why?
I experience, well, not just dreams, but also like sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
And with sleep, I noticed if I had a cigarette before bed, I would usually get sleep paralysis. Or if I had like some alcohol before bed, or certainly if I had both, like some alcohol and cigarette at the same time before bed, I would be even more likely to have sleep paralysis.
Hmm.
It's very strange.
It's scary.
State of consciousness. Yeah, because I'm also very claustrophobic, so it's like, yeah, if you can't move, it's like you've buried alive. Really, it's like you're buried alive, not being able to move. Certainly, if you're in an awkward position in bed and maybe you're face down in your pillow, you feel like you can't breathe. It's awful.
Yeah.
um, but interesting. I think that's kind of like going back to the suffering thing. It's maybe like something that's painful or unpleasant, but still worthwhile because you get something kind of rewarding experience from it as well.
Yeah.
And David Pierce as well was also quite a big influence with the confidence to try something.
That's interesting because,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. He's not like super. He's like very skeptical of them. It seems like.
Yeah, I think he did. I've seen him praised quite a few times.
Yeah.
I think he just recommends caution for obvious reasons about trips,
Hmm.
which are something I've been quite lucky with. Really, I've not had too many experiences like that, but they're also quite a bittersweet subject because certainly in the UK, I think the laws got a bit stricter, so I had to kind of leave them behind, which was quite bittersweet, like kind of breaking up with a girlfriend or a lover, really, and to kind of move on without them, which is very sentimental. That was how rewarding they were for me. I wish I could have gone on a little bit longer.
Hmm.
UK is a strange country.
Yeah. Hmm.
We got some freedoms, but also some things that I wish we'd have done differently. Was the Psychoactive Substances Act 2016? Yeah, 1626. Something like that. Which kind of was like a blanket ban, of course, except for alcohol, and cigarettes, and caffeine, nicotine patches, coffee.
All the popular ones.
Yeah, I know, right? Sugar. but I try and kind of like see a silver lining, and maybe I would meant to just have that kind of period and then leave them behind for now and move on to other things.
Hmm.
And that's another thing that kind of opened up for me, the noticing serendipity and synchronicity and coincidences, or things lining up, like sending a message.
You know, I think that's that. So.
Like I've got a guardian angel, if you like.
Yeah. Hmm.
I don't know how many of your viewers are atheists or that way.
I don't know. Did you say what am I?
What would you describe yourself as?
Well,
Sure about.
for political purposes, I would say that I am a Christian. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Oh.
So that people... That one's really popular, so I figured if I want people to like me... No, I'm just kidding. But no, I don't know. I mean, like... I don't really know that, like... I guess agnostic is the answer then. I don't know. Like I do think that our universe could have been created. That's something I sort of entertain. It could be like some simulation or something. It could be,
Could be like the same thing.
yeah.
There's nothing of overlap.
Yeah. The simulation theory is really just Christianity. Or not Christianity, but like, like it's, well,
Creation myth.
yeah, creation myth. It is cyber creation myth or something. Oh, I wanted to make a comment on what you said about synchronicity. So I think so the hypothesis that I've been really into is, I think, so my sort of thing is I think that psychedelics what they're doing is maybe putting us in a state similar to what children are in, especially like infants, the higher dose that you go. And
Oh, definitely, yeah.
yeah, and so that can either sound like really specific and unlikely, or I think if you look at it in the terms of like that the reason that we're not like an infant now is highly because we learned a lot of stuff, right? And we've like calibrated ourselves to the world. And so I think if you're disrupting things that you've learned or calibrated, then you'll be left in a state that is like as if you've never learned or never calibrated things. So like you could argue that like anything disrupting memory might even bring you closer to a childlike state. But I also think that like the effects of psychedelics might actually play a role that is kind of like functionally important for children, like that it might function to slow, like so if you look at like QRI, they talk about like annealing. I basically would argue that children are in an unannealed state, and that there's actually an important function in not annealing for a long time until you've like collected enough that you don't anneal into something ridiculous. And there's also like, I don't know, so like when you say synchronicities, I think like that is a default mode of trying to understand the world, whereas like when you move past that, what you're really doing is like, okay, like so actually this ties into something also really interesting about optical illusions. So like people with like schizophrenia will sometimes, and people on cannabis will sometimes not experience optical illusions. Instead, they'll actually see more accurately. And
Oh, really?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah, I know, I love it. I'll send you stuff about that later.
yeah, that's very interesting.
And so like I think that illusions are basically like a perceptual autocorrect. Like if you think of like your text on your phone, there's like the autocorrect where it's like it's almost using like this which word does it predict you using next. And so I think that the illusions are basically like taking the context of what you're seeing, and rather than like trying to like take in actual raw sensory information, it's relying on like these just habits. It's like you're almost like addicted to seeing the world as whatever it most likely is. And illusions are basically, I think, an autocorrect. And so yeah, and I forgot how I was going to tie that into children actually, but presumably you would have to like almost train your mind to see these illusionary kind of things. And like basically I was going to try to generalize it to everything in the mind, everything that we learn, especially. Oh yeah, that's what sorry, I'm sorry, but I remembered. So like when I was talking about the synchronicities thing, I think the synchronicities mode is almost like that's what you would see if you weren't constantly just leaping to conclusions and forming like basically stuck in the world of illusions or something. I think if you like pulled back from that, you'd kind of be in this mode where you're trying to form new illusions, which then you're starting to notice patterns rather than imposing patterns based on your memory of the past, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's quite often reported when people take LSD and give me that, it feels like they revert to a childlike state. And I've always held childhood consciousness in very high esteem. I think about my own childhood very often, and what it was like, what it felt like, what it looked like. You consider childhood consciousness to be its own class of consciousness. I'd say up to about just before adolescence, maybe, but more or less. And that's something that should be looked into, more researched and written about, and what it was like. I mean, obviously the older you get, the longer ago it happened, but I've always considered childhood to be an extended mystical experience. Probably from the ages of about 3 or 4, because in my case I don't really remember an awful lot before that, up to about 29. It certainly felt like my different modes of perception were closer together, where things felt more synesthetic and cross-wired with each other. And then as you get older, they kind of separate, things become a bit less synesthetic, less vibrant even, or just different, less mystical, more mundane even.
Have you read any of my stuff? Have you read any of my stuff about this?
Yeah, you sent me some links.
How do I know you're not just saying this because you know I think this?
No, that's something I've had in my mind for a long time. Maybe this is serendipity. It's a synchronicity.
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the first things that kind of brought us together. I think.
Oh yeah, you're right. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious, I have memories that are kind of like what you're saying right now, and but it's really weird. So one thing that I think is different is I think once we're deeper into adulthood, there's a lot of sort of, I don't know, okay, so I guess maybe it'd be better to approach it this way. One thing I've felt with psilocybin is that I could stop kind of filtering the world in a way. Well, I don't everybody says that, so I'm trying to not phrase it that way actually. So it's kind of my senses and my attention are divided in certain ways that follow routines, where I allocate maybe 20% to vision, 20% to hearing, and then I'm thinking on top of that. And I have a usual habitual way of going about the world, probably based on how I decided was, if I really am into thinking, which I think I do that a lot, I'm it's how much can I neglect paying attention to my eyes so that I can just think more? And so I think there's some amount of whatever you're rewarded by, I think we calibrate ourselves to. And then in this psilocybin state, though, it's like I stopped doing that, and I didn't know that I could stop doing that. And what ended up happening is like I stopped thinking internally kind of almost at all. And then I just was like watching my eyes and my ears at a similar rate that's as if it's like I'm watching a movie. Like I notice if I'm watching a movie and I'm really engrossed into it, that is a similar experience. Like I can stop thinking during those moments, or maybe if I'm playing a game, something really rewarding. And it was like I did that, but I was just sitting there in like this forest of Yosemite, and it was like weird. I don't know. Then it got to a point though where I felt like I could pull away from seeing my senses through a certain lens that I've trained myself to do. Like if I look at a tree, I have like kind of like responses in my mind that I actually also argue that those are synesthetic connections. So it's almost like I can reverse the synesthesia that I've trained myself to see from, and see it as almost like just lights and colors. And then the more I do that, the more that the rigidity of what I'm looking at starts to fall away, because it's like when I know it's a tree, there's certain assumptions that just automatically happen. Like it's not going to move, it's not going to come closer to me, it's not going to bend because it's too rigid, because trees are like rocks basically. And my mind's like assuming all of that. But then when I stopped, it's like I don't know where the tree and like the background, I don't know where there's a line. Like I'm not assuming that there's a line. Like if I hold still, the more it's difficult to tell that, because like if I move, it's like there's like a parallax, and with the parallax that kind of gives me some more detail. Like obviously the tree is separately, the pixels on the tree separately move, so that must be something. But if I hold still, it's like it starts to blend together, and it's like one mesh of like I don't know, just colors. And then like once that happens, I start to reinterpret things. Like parts of the tree are actually creating a shape that's parts of the background, and it's like I'm losing track of the fact that there was ever a tree there, and now there's all these other shapes that don't actually exist in reality, and I'm like losing touch, and they're all starting to look like liquid and move. And I think the liquidness is because I don't know what's actually moving. And now, like, if I move my head slightly, like how I'm doing now, it's like now I don't know what's moving because it's an object, or because it's moving because it has behavior, or if it's like literally like liquid. And it'll just kind of like do this, and like my interpretation falls apart, and I'm just looking at like a stream of geometry and colors. And like I think that's kind of how it is.
That's incredible.
And maybe like childhood is like that. Like you haven't figured out what trees are yet, so it's like you don't know what you're looking at. So like you're working from like a limited perspective. Like you don't even have object permanence. Like you don't know that, like when my hand goes behind this hand, you don't know that it still exists yet.
Yeah, it reminds me of a phenomenon that happens when someone loses a mode of perception, like eyesight, and become blind, and there are other modes of the other sensory modalities are enhanced, or when you put yourself into an environment where you get sensory deprivation.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Do you know people hallucinate in that environment? Like if you put them in total silence, they'll start to like basically hear their imagination as if it were as loud as real sense.
Yeah, there was in my local area, there used to be a flotation tank centre close by, and unfortunately it closed down now, but because of the COVID and what happened with the economy, but for a good couple of years, I went to them a few times, and that was an interesting experience.
What was it like?
Oh, it was. I remember, when you're trying to fall asleep, and sometimes you get the hypnic jerks. I used to get those a lot. I would be slipping away, and then poof, I kind of get a jolt, and I'd hear lots of popping sound. Sometimes it would feel like I was going through a tunnel,
you can see like the phonemes and the eyelids kind of arrange into a certain pattern. Yeah, yeah. It made me sad when it closed down because it was just amazing having a flotation centre in your city. It was great.
Yeah.
I think there's few left in England, but a bit further away. Like or something like that. And then, of course, it kind of introduced me to like John C. Lilly and who he was,
Yeah.
what he got up to. Compelling life story. Yeah, it was. I feel like I could have gone deeper, but yeah, they shut down because lockdown and stuff like that. Unfortunately, but so I recommend it if you get a chance to buy one, to try one.
I have, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. What do you think?
So I think I've tried it 3 times or 2 times. I can't actually remember, but I basically didn't do it. I took things with it.
Yeah.
The first time it was kratom, so it wasn't really like, I don't know what that would do. I mean, it probably did something.
Still felt good. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, or numb, more numb, maybe. And then I've also tried a really, really small dose of like psilocybin inside of it.
A microdose.
Kinda, yeah. Maybe more. Maybe like 1 gram or less. No, probably like half a gram. The thing I noticed after both times, though, is it feels like I feel like there's a intense shock that comes after. Like I become like at first it's like I'm super calm, and then when I come back it's like the senses are like, it's like, whoa, this is like really intense. And
Like being reborn.
yeah. And like I would go yeah. I would like freak out actually. Like it would make me anxious, like especially the more stimulating it got. Like if I was in a grocery store, that freaked me out a lot. Like just all the people, like it's like maybe because it was like a bubble that I was in during the experience, and now everything, like my vision would be enhanced too actually. Like
Yes.
it kind of reboot my senses or something during the experience.
Yeah.
Or you could go ahead actually.
Yeah, no, I just remember, it's light being very bright, and you have to go through.
Yeah.
Maybe I stood for taking the blindfold off.
Yeah. I don't know, like during the experience it wasn't like super crazy, but like I remember that the time with psilocybin it was more anxious, and like I felt restless, and like once I finally got into it, it was basically the end of it. So I don't know, but I did start to like see minor things, but it wasn't crazy. Like I could have gotten that if I just laid in bed and maybe like blindfolded myself, I feel like, but it felt weird, and like I couldn't
Underwhelming.
sorta on the psilocybin, yeah. On the kratom I think it was actually more intense. I don't know.
Yeah. Gage, I think I've got to sign off.
That's okay.
Family's gone to bed at midnight. Next time I'll definitely, you can start earlier if you like. It's like about. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about kind of midnightish.
Oh my gosh.
But I'd love to continue this topic next
Okay.
time, if you'd like.
Yeah, I will hit you up. And thank you for being a guest here. And
Oh, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Glad
I'll
we
send
got
you.
together.
Yeah, I'll send you links, and yeah, we'll figure out where to go next.
Have we done like an hour and a half?
Yes, that is exactly.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, well, no, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. And yeah, well, I'll speak to you soon.
Sounds good.
I just click X.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See ya.
Okay, speak to you soon. See you later.
Wonder if anyone is left. I'm gonna check Twitch and see, have people stayed? There is one person. My camera's all cut off now because I had it set up so well, it's kind of funny. It's actually two windows, and it links up. Like, look, look at that. Wow, you see that? We could just let's do it like this. Yeah. Okay. So that was pretty fun. I noticed some streamers like chill after. There's one person. If you have any questions, I will answer you. I'll probably need to eat food in a second though too. I gotta figure this out. How do I? There we go. Okay. I'll delete this, and I'll fix. I get really insecure about the asymmetry of my face. I wonder if he sees I'm still in the call and feels like he's like, what are you doing? So maybe I should exit it and use my regular camera. I think I'll do that. So I see, you can probably still hear me, yep. I can see there's a question, and I haven't seen it. The illusion that you said, actually maybe I have. I'll look it up. I'm trying to think what I have to do this. Video capture device, I think that's it. EUPOC camera, whoa, it's all distorted. Well, now you can probably see me now. Hi. Maybe I'll share my screen. Voice meter is not necessary anymore, so I'm gonna close that. I'm gonna also, oh, there's 3 people. There's more people, even though even though the guy left, Adam left. So I'm gonna share my screen in a second. I'll leave Twitch open so that it can get weirder. I'll open Twitch and then it'll be like this crazy thing. Okay, so I think there's a delay on my voice also. Display capture, is that it? Yes, that's it. Now it's gonna get crazy. Okay, so I'll look up what you said. Oh my gosh, it's confusing. I think if I, wow, it must be disorienting. Here we go. I'll move this that way. You don't need to see the bar at the bottom. Oh, there's people in the chat here. Okay. Have I seen the double parallax illusion? I'm gonna actually look it up. Double parallax illusion. Let's see, is it in images? Probably not, right? It's probably a video, it looks like, because it's probably motion. Oh. Is it the spiral? I don't think so. That's called the motion illusion or something. Double parallax illusion. I'm gonna check back on, wow, why is it showing that? Is it? This is just kind of like general illusion images, it looks like. It's not a thing. What? If you shift objects to background and repeat, it shifts the foreground. Interesting. Huh. I wish there was like a video demonstration of what that means. Double parallax. So I wonder, anyone else there in chat, do you want to say something? I don't know, I said there's like 3 people or something. Or Librariax of Babel. Do you have more things to say? Just look up illusion. Okay. Well, it looks like that's what it is. Let's see, just look up illusion. Oh, it's all moving. The whole page is moving. That one is actually moving. Kind of wish... I kind of want to stream my phone and show like the art. I don't know how to do that yet, but I think there is a way. I think Twitch allows it actually. Let's see, what's going on Twitch? Look, there's still 3 people. Look, you can see Twitch. Isn't it scary? Look what's gonna happen. It's gonna... Once the delay catches up, it's gonna get weird. Looks like we're almost caught up. No, we are caught up. Okay. Yeah. It's like an infinite loop. Interesting. Supreme message. I want to check, but it's not safe. I'd be doxing everybody. So what else? I kind of wanted to talk about ego death. Maybe I should talk about that. Ego death. I feel like I was going to make content about this, but it's such a hard concept to actually articulate. The difficulty, I don't know, basically there's, like, I've talked about it before actually. I talked about it with this guest named Tommy. I just think that idea that we have this conditioned way of responding to incentives, when that changes, we kind of are just float about in a more natural state of things, which actually can sometimes lead to insights, but it can lead to alternatively wrong ways of looking at things. Because it takes away, if you were right in the first place, it takes you away from that, and then you might come to the same right conclusions, or you might not. But when you come back out of it, then you're kind of left with a different way of looking at certain things. Like some of the things might be completely obviously wrong, while other things, it's like kind of territory that you haven't yet explored, like, and maybe the scientism religions haven't yet imprinted on your mind yet, and now you are free to just adopt your own scientistic, observational conclusion or whatever, epiphany, and then you could be wrong about whatever, or maybe you're right, but the chances of you being right are probably pretty slim, since even the people following scientistic religions are probably also not mapping onto things. Like, they're just kind of I mean, I feel like it's like you look like, it's like if you look at a person, I don't know, like you, wow, interesting, it's more diverse than I thought, but that's probably on purpose to counteract racist algorithms or something. But it's weird because the AI art is definitely racist. and I have to go out of my way to make it less racist, which is a little frustrating because then I'm getting self-conscious about if I'm doing that the right way. But anyways, like, none of these are people, right? These are all images, for one, but then they're like an organized set of pixels that give you the illusion that you're looking at what appears to be the representation of a person inside of your memory, right? And I think that there's a lot of layers of abstraction here, right? Like, these are all more like cave paintings that are high quality enough that they seem realistic to us. And they're probably, like, really inaccurate. They're just convincing enough to our really inaccurate brain. Like, the inaccuracy level of, like, a cave painting to these pictures, I think, is, like, the level of inaccuracy that these pictures are to reality. But actually, probably no. Probably reality is so much further away than cave paintings are to these pictures. I bet cave paintings and these pictures are actually relatively close to each other, and then reality is relatively very far away. And but that's not even the right metaphor that I meant to bring up. I don't know. It's like really hard to talk about. But like a scientific religion, it's like a cave painting version of science, I guess. And but it's like, the way I see it going down is like, people in science, they're okay with it because it's like, yeah, this more or less represents a person, this little stick figure. But then, I don't know, like, there's a lot of inaccuracies of it. Oh my gosh, the Facebook thing is like changing. Why does it have a voice on it? Why does it look like it's recording something? Oh my god. That freaks me out a little bit. I'm gonna check on Twitch though. Twitch is streaming audio to me too. Everyone freaks out when I try to make these points though. Like, they either tell me I'm making the most obvious point ever, but then to me, the reason I'm like bothered by that is because, I don't know, I don't see people living in alignment with that kind of acknowledgement. I see people actively saying the wrong things, contradicting what they're telling me is obvious, and I don't know. Like, so I think we have to go about life religiously, right? But like, kind of just like this idea of scientism, we kind of have to accept this. Like, it's like the alternative is what? Get everybody on board with actually everyone being scientists of every genre? No. Like, that's not realistic, obviously, so we have to, like, kind of just accept some level of authority-based indoctrination, and that's just the best we can do. And I've seen people try to argue, like, sort of like, I think people would want to not believe that that's religion, because religion, calling it religion is, like, offensive. And, but I think we should just acknowledge it, that scientists are functioning as priests and telling people what to believe, and that's okay. But also, if there's something better, we should work towards it, and we just don't know what it is. I don't know. But there's a lot of weird realms. Like, so, I think, actually, when I bring up this whole science stuff, the point of it is not actually that, like, a lot of people can understand that. And that's kind of the point of that, is that people would be like, well, yeah, I agree with that. But then it's like, it gets so much worse when you start talking about, like, oh, my friend is mad about this political thing. Then it's like, you've just left the realm of, like, cave paintings of scientists, and now it's like, it's just like, I would say it's like full-blown insanity when we start to, like, talk about like it's like we're synchronizing on something, and that's probably something we evolved to do. But now it's like entering the realm of like, it's like how Christianity is like, we all agree that Jesus was this magical boy and he did this. And like, I think that the way that we interpret political reactions and how we are supposed to react and what's right and wrong is kind of like in that realm of magic that Christianity is. And it's now become like we confine ourselves to a fixed way of behaving and interpreting people's behavior through the lens of like archetypes and different things like that. Like we've kind of decided that this is how people act and how they work, and I think we're reinforcing those behaviors. Like in a previous video on YouTube recently, I brought up this idea of like what if I were to just start crying in the street? That's breaking the rules of the religion. If I just start crying and people come up to me and they're like, what's wrong? And then I just get in their face and I'm like, what if I just start crying like this? Like I'm like, and I just start crying and wailing louder, and they're like, please stop. And I'm like doing this. And then they call the cops. They call the violence officers, violence enforcement. And then they're like, we're going to need to use fear and violence to stop you from being a heretic, because we don't know what you're doing right now. Like, did you break your memory of what it's like to be in our culture by taking drugs? Is that what you've done? And then they're going to be like, I don't know. We don't know how to predict you. You're not following the rules. And since we don't know how to predict you, you might be dangerous. So now we're going to have to arrest you and put you in a cage. That's what we're going to do because you've enacted heresy. And it could be like the most arbitrary behavior. Like, this is just crying, right? Like, it's just this arbitrary rule breaking. And so much of our lives, though, it's not like it's impossible for us to actually do what I've just described. What's actually happening, though, is that I'm very, very afraid of the violence officers, and so I won't do that. I'm afraid of not just the violence officers, but like social rejection. I'm afraid of like the intense adrenaline that's going to wash over me as I break the rule. And I don't know. So like, so much of this fear and reward is driving what it means to be human. It's not really what it means to be human. It's what it means to be indoctrinated to your strange culture and the echoes of the past. Like, I don't know how far back it goes, but it probably goes back fairly far. I don't know. Like, so like, people will talk about like how to succeed in the world, or like how to do their job the right way, and how people should be acting towards each other. Like, all these different things that are like being limited through this like extraordinarily filtered lens that I think is like, it's like obviously jobs are primarily filtered through like, what if you ask what job someone wants to acquire, it's like it's filtered through the list of what's possible, which is then prescribed by the culture. But then there's people who actually invent jobs, like people who invent technology or whatever, right? But we also, so that's like very practically limited. But there's also like things where it's like we kind of brought up gender earlier. There's like archetypes of what you're allowed to do as a man. And that can be very distressing for people. Like, there's people like that tell me it's hard to be a man. It's like, it's not hard to be your sex. Like, that literally doesn't matter. It's hard that people react to your sex. It's hard that people care about that. It's hard that they tell you what you're supposed to do because of that. That's what's hard. Which is the religion that I'm basically saying exists. Is there's like this set of like weird behaviors, weird rules, weird beliefs about how reality works, And like when I brought it up to people, they usually will be like, there's like half of people think it's obvious because they believe in gender being a social construct, and some part of believing that kind of is, I guess, related to this, what I'm describing. And then there's other people who say, no, the behaviors that are gendered are actually driven by our biology. And it's like, that might be where some of it stemmed from, but there's obviously extreme amounts of incentives. Like if I wear makeup as a man, that makeup is obviously not biological, right? If I wear makeup as a man, I will be shamed for doing something that literally has nothing to do with the sex, right? It's not related to being biologically female or anything like that. Instead, it's like this weird, like mystical religious behavior that people are doing. And if I do that, I will be punished. Like, I'm scared to do that. I'm scared to go in public wearing makeup because I know that I'll be breaking the rules. But then there's like, so like makeup's more obviously not related to, because it's like we physically apply it, right? But there's like psychological makeup. There's psychological makeup that is being applied to both genders that are forced upon you. And for some people it causes intense suffering, and some it doesn't. And it's actually not related to sex. Like, if it were related to sexual inclination, then I think it would be much less distressing for people, and I don't know. And it's kind of like, I don't know, like if you think of what people do alone, people become more like silly or crazy or make memes about what they do alone. That's kind of like a mildly religion-free environment, but it's still not. There's still like parts of people's identity that, like most people aren't going to go try makeup alone, right? But they could. Or most men would not try makeup alone, probably. I mean, like if you told them to prove a point, yeah. But we're still confined, even while we're alone, without the pressures that exist there, because we're being pressured by our own mind and our fake identity that we impose on ourselves because of our religion about our identity. And it's kind of limiting. Like, people get fed ideas, like the ones that I think are most toxic are like people believing they know the limitations of what kind of success they can acquire in life. People tell themselves like, no, that's not realistic. Like people tell me to believe in their religion about my life, about, like, I'm writing this book right now, and there's like people that think I'm like, they're basically telling me I'm gone crazy, like I need to go apply to grad school, and that I'm just insane. And then there's like other people who are like, this is like a really great step forward in your life, Gage. And it's like people I look up to that are like older than me, that I consider kind of like a, like I almost treat them as a mentor. And then those people are like, this is like a really important step in your life. This is good that you've done it. And then other people are like, you're fucking psychotic. You're manic. You're mentally ill now. Like, and it's just like, I don't know. So it's like when people say, though, that I'm mentally ill, it's like they have this whole religion that they believe in about what's realistic and practical and what's possible. Like, they keep telling me they know how to see the future. They're basically giving me premonitions, prophecy. They're trying to become the priest, right? They're like telling me their visions of the future that apply to my life, and telling me that I've gone off the rails of the religious truth that they've prescribed for me, and that their version of reality is superior, and that I'm supposed to follow it. And I really stand more close to just like, I don't know it's possible, but I think it's sickening that they think they do. I think they're doing it to themselves. They tell themselves all the ways that they can't succeed and they can't do things because they believe they understand the future and how life works so strongly that they've decided to impose it on themselves and on me. And I don't think that they would... These people that I'm thinking of are actually let me check. Let me just check where we're at right now. Okay. Maybe I don't want to talk about it. Like, I don't know. Some of you watching probably are like, there's a problem where it's like, you're probably having an idea of who I'm talking about, and that bothers me. But I talk about this in the chats too. So, yeah. But it's like a really weird thing. Like I'm talking behind people's back in public or something weird. Kinda. But I think it's pretty universal anyway. I don't know. Like, it's a weird thing. Like, I think just the entire majority of how people conceptualize who they are, their relation to this thing we call society, all of that's like this crazy religion. It's like a cult that has just, it's like they've gone blind to the fact that it's culty. But it's like, not everybody is blind to that. Like, I think if I asked if it's like a cult, a lot of people would probably agree. But then they're gonna like brainwash me. Like, they're gonna tell me to join the cult, and then they're like, yeah, it's culty, but come Gage, come join our cult. Like, and try to tell me that they've found the future. They know where the future goes. And it's like, no, I refuse. And I know this, like, to some, this has to sound like this crazy manic ravings right now, rantings. Good for you. That's your religion. Your religion about psychiatry. Like, you're whoever you are thinking that, I know you're not a psychiatrist. So you better check yourself, right? Not that a psychiatrist is the most sane person either, but definitely more sane than whoever you are telling me that I'm diagnosable. That's just used as a cheap way to discredit people. You know, actually, that reminds me of a epiphany I was thinking about earlier that's probably known by a lot of you, because you, at least intuitively, this wasn't really an epiphany, I just realized how to articulate it. I saw people kind of like talking about science in very technical terms around people that I'm not sure understand that. And I think that the people talking about the scientific terms are aware that the intended audience isn't able to judge what they're saying. So to me, it's like, I think that a lot of us do that. I probably do that too. Maybe my blog is an example of it, where you would kind of demonstrate a level of nuance to show that you're more nuanced than the other person, so that they're pressured to concede to your position because they just simply can't assess it. It's like this weird implicit appeal to authority. And I see that happening a lot. I don't know if people are like doing, like, I wanted to call it out earlier, but I also didn't want to, like, I think the people that are doing it are really, really smart, and I'm scared that they will start to use like all these psychological warfare and just like dominate the shit out of me, and so I actually just choose not to engage with it. But okay, this is getting weird. I'm gonna check if okay, there's some stuff in the chat. Okay, I heard Sadhguru say there is no good or bad, fear or love, because they are just thoughts, and all my psychiatrists have been influenced by this. Do you think that's because of their culture? Because that could be possible. This is why ups and downs, good and bad, is bipolar. This is all too loose for me to judge, but maybe. Fear and love is schizo. I don't know how to interpret that. There's not enough words. Like, I would say fear and love can probably be a lot of things. and what is fear and love. Like, you could just go through a huge rabbit hole. Society is a society of dependence. Yes, yes, yes. It is a cult that forces itself upon you. Because all in society depend on society, yes. So everyone in society relies on everyone else. I would say it's way more... I would say kinda. I would say there's a different, more accurate phrasing. Like, okay, so this is like a cave painting, I would say. I would say that I would struggle to articulate the actuality of it, but it would be more like every person usually relies on a list of other people in which there's a continuous connection to, like, the whole of society, at least presumably, but there might be bubbles that exist away from that too. But it's way more like choppy. Like, I might rely on like a couple people, and then those people rely on other people, and it goes on and on and on and on. And so it's like a house of cards, I guess. Yeah, so it's like, but I don't rely on everybody. Like, obviously people can just die and it won't affect me. And that's part of the problem, is because there's a lot of power in groups of people, and if they don't get impacted by certain people dying, there's a lot of power versus a lot of not power, and you can just like kill off people. You can starve them to death by not caring about them enough or not having enough empathy. So that gets like a little bit spooky. Like, I think that there's some scenarios right now where like we might farm like a third world country and not pay them enough to get them out of unethical situations where it's like traumatic and horrible. So we might just use them and exploit them at giving the most minimal thing to ensure that we can continuously extract what we want from them. Like slavery. Slavery was an obvious example of this, where it's like you could just give them minimal living, and they can't do anything really about it. And I think that that's kind of the problem with the fact that we don't rely all on each other in that way. It's like there's enough separation and kind of clumping of people that depend on each other that our individual selfish interests can become a huge influence over the lives of people that can't do anything about it. And that's kind of messed up. So I think, like, I have no idea what to do about that, but it's horrible. And I barely know how to articulate that. Yeah. I really need to eat, actually, though, because I was planning to eat it like 4 hours ago. So I'm gonna do that. So hopefully this was interesting. And I will do more streams soon. I might actually stream Dying Light later. It depends on how I feel, to be honest, because right now I'm starting to kind of like I have to cook, I have to do a lot of stuff still. So like, I'm getting tired, and I just did all this. So yeah, I will think about it. Dying Light is really fun. It's like scary as heck, thrilling. I try to pressure my friend to play in the way that is I find more entertaining by making it scarier and always playing at night. And we're playing on nightmare mode, which is the hardest difficulty. So we have to like run, and it's like I get dizzy and lightheaded, and it's crazy. And you can watch me like freak out and get emotional, and then extract that emotion and do whatever you want with it. Yeah. If you want to just emotionally, I don't know. Okay. I'll see you guys later. I'm going to end the stream now.